Hello and welcome to Birth as We Know It. I am your podcast host, Kiona Nessenbaum. I have experienced birth as a doula, a student midwife, and as a mother of 3 amazing children with my husband and high school sweetheart by my side. After attending over 130 births, including my own, I've realized that each birth experience is truly unique. So make sure you subscribe and join me every week as we are guided through many different birth experiences through the lens of the storyteller. Please be aware that some of the stories can be triggering to hear, so feel free to pause, take a breath, and come back and listen whenever you're ready. With that said, let's prep ourselves to dive deep and get detailed about what really happens in the birth space. As a reminder, this podcast is intended for educational purposes only and has no intention of giving or replacing any medical advice. All advice that is given on the podcast is from the personal experiences of the storytellers. All medical or health-related questions should be directed to your licensed provider. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Birth as We Know It podcast. Today, I am super excited to be interviewing my oldest sister, Oz. Oz, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
So let's start off by talking a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Yeah, of course. So I am the oldest of 6 siblings. Now, you already know how crazy we are, but my immediate family, I would say it's just Josh and our littles, Nikoma, and she's 6 months old. And I guess I also should add our fur babies. We have Hazel and Timber as well.
Yes, Hazel and Timber. They're so cute. Let's just go ahead and dive right into the interview questions. Have you ever seen or attended a birth before your own?
I have. I've only gone to one birth prior, and it was your last one. And you scared the living daylights out of me. I thought that was efficient birth control, but apparently it was not.
Yeah, you actually got pregnant pretty soon after you saw that. It was also very apparent that it did scare the living bejesus or whatever out of you because you almost passed out. So
I did. And, I want to say this without the risk of being looked at as like a weirdo or something, but being a Cancer and being a serious empath, I feel like there was just so much just raw emotions in the room, and it just the whole birthing space, it was so primal. It was the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen, even though it was also terrifying at the same time. It was a lot for me to take in. I'm a sponge when it comes to emotions.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot. If anybody's listened to my previous episodes, you would know that my 3rd birth was my most intense. So I also felt all of the height of emotions as everything was going down. Well, obviously I was in labor, but we're not here to talk about me. Let's go ahead and move forward. How was finding out you were pregnant? Were you and Josh trying? Were you not?
Yes. So Josh and I, it's funny because we say that like I got pregnant shortly after. I think that's when we started trying is your birth. So I think we were trying for about, well, maybe a little bit even before that, but we were trying for about a year maybe. And we actually ended up getting pregnant. I think we found out about 6 months or so after your birth. We found out in February that year. I know she was born in October, so yeah. It was intense. I went through all the emotions, trying to get pregnant and getting really down, and it wasn't happening as soon as I thought it was going to happen. And I was just like, oh, my baby sister has 3 kids. How come I can't have 1 kid right now? And that biological clock was ticking. In my 30s now, so I was definitely a ball of stress. Everybody told me not to stress out, but that never works.
Yeah, because it's definitely hard to not stress when you're actively trying, because then like the intimacy that goes into creating a human becomes more of like a transaction, because you're like, hey, I'm fertile these days, let's do this right now.
Yep.
Unless you put in a lot of effort to make it more of a natural kind of,
Yeah, for sure. I know that Josh definitely was having fun at first, and then he was just like, oh.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, I get that for sure. And then how was your pregnancy overall? Did you have any health conditions or any specific cravings?
So I did have some health conditions. Actually, I already knew that it was going to be a wild ride because when first off, it took me a little while to get pregnant, and I think that had a lot to do with just my mental state, and also I was just constantly stressed out. I was probably not the healthiest that I could have been. I needed to be a more fit version of myself, but I'm just thinking that's probably what caused it to take so long. And also, when I did get pregnant, I found out, I think it was towards the middle of my pregnancy, I found out pretty late that I actually did have gestational diabetes. There was a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of a hiccup in me finding out that I had gestational diabetes because I had to transfer, or there was a transfer of power, I guess, in who my caretaker was. They got bought out by another company, and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't share information. So I would have known earlier that I had a high A1C, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out I think at 28 weeks or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and by that time, I, of course, was living my life the way that I wanted. I was giving in on all of my cravings. I think I had like 2 slushies a day, which was absolutely terrible knowing that I had diabetes. Oh my God. Yeah, that was probably so my mood swings were real.
Yeah.
It was science based.
Yeah, definitely science-based. How did that feel? Like, did a lot of dots connect in your head once you found out that you had gestational diabetes based off how you were feeling?
Yes, 100%. So it's crazy when you think about it. When you have gestational diabetes, your mood and your just the way that you feel in general is affected so wildly with the food that you're eating. Say I was having a low, I would really be like so sluggish, extremely sluggish. I would want to just sleep, sleep, sleep. And I would get very irritable, very like wildly irritable. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
at first I was thinking oh this is just pregnancy. This is normal. Everyone gets emotional. Everyone gets sluggish, and but there was a reason why my body was doing that. It was just way two opposite sides of the scale. It's like either way up or way down.
Yeah, so your lows were really low and your highs were really high.
Oh yeah, and it was definitely it explained a lot of things. I looked up a lot of the side effects or just some of the things symptoms of having it, and I was checking all the boxes.
And would you say that you looked up the symptoms before or after you found out?
Definitely after, because I knew that there was a risk that I could have gestational diabetes just because in general there's diabetes running in our family as well. I knew that I was
Mm-hmm.
at higher risk of possibly getting it, but I didn't really pay much attention. I was like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. There's a chance, but it's not going to happen to me. I'll be okay. And I had been feeling somewhat normal anyway. Well, my mind made it a new normal for me, and I was just like, oh, this is just normal. I'm supposed to be like lying in agony in bed, just like, oh, don't talk to me.
That's a pretty sad normal. Yeah, that's a
Sad
pretty
normal.
sad normal to
It is.
accept. Yeah.
And I definitely did
Yeah.
accept it. And so when I did find out though that that's completely not normal and that you could still enjoy your pregnancy, I started changing things around. I started doing way more exercise, and then I started watching my diet. And I didn't get medicated until a little bit later. I think um, it was a little bit later in my third trimester because I ended up having to get transferred to a high risk OB. And
Mm-hmm.
she was amazing. She was just like, "Oh, I really wish that you'd come to me earlier. We could have done a whole bunch more." I know because the doctors always say that with gestational diabetes, you run the chance of having a large baby, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that scared me to death. Oh my goodness. Especially being my
Yeah.
first baby, I was
Mm-hmm.
terrified that I was going to tear. or that something was going to happen and she was going to get too big and I'm going to have to get an emergency C-section, which that was an assumption for a lot of the people that were taking care of me. They were like, oh yeah, well, when are you going to schedule your C-section? And that was pretty annoying to me, because I kind of went into it, especially having you as my sister. I kind of went into it with the mindset of like, oh, I don't want to be medicated. I want to try to do everything that I know that my body can do, and it wasn't a good feeling to kind of be like typecast, like you're an actor being typecast, like, oh yeah, you have gestational diabetes, you're a bigger woman, automatic, you're getting a C-section. And, I just felt like I didn't really have any choices there, but I did not. Yeah. They started saying that. And I was like, no, I'm not doing the C-section. I want to try and do everything as natural as I can. I want to do this because it's my body, and Dr. Park, it was Dr. Park Wang that she was the one that was taking care of me towards the end. She was actually really understanding of that. She did express her concerns because she was getting big. She was getting big quickly, regardless of me regulating my sugars and me doing workouts. We were already past the point since I'd found out so late, and I'd started doing things to help so late,
Yeah. So let's rewind just a tiny bit, because I want to know if, like, when you became pregnant, did you have an idea of where you were birthing? Because based on your story so far, we know that you ended up needing to transfer into a hospital setting. Was that your original plan for your birth location or not?
No. So I wanted to go to a birth center, and actually the one that you were working at, because I was familiar with it. I'd already been there for your birth, and it felt like home. And literally, like, there was a couch in there, there was a bed in there, like an actual bed, not a hospital bed. There was a tub, and I was just like, this feels very comfortable. It feels very homey. And it doesn't have that hospital smell, or just that cold feeling of a hospital. And I just felt like the staff were more willing to hear you as well. So that was my original plan. But of course, once you develop issues that might make birth more of a wild card, I guess, that's when they really do need to transfer you, because a lot of stuff could happen, So yes, I did end up needing to get transferred, but I got a good recommendation for the doctor that I went to. And I'm glad that I was recommended to her, because she was actually really sweet.
Yeah. And so just so the listeners are aware, you got bounced around quite a bit. You started out at the Puget Sound Birth Center in Renton, and then the birth center actually got bought out by a different organization. And, you stayed with that organization only because Mercedes was working with that same organization, and you felt comfortable with Mercedes, right?
That's the only reason I stayed, because, well, she's birthed multiple of your kids, or been there at least for multiple of your kids. I felt like it was family already.
Yeah.
So I wasn't shy to talk to her, and she just was so sweet. Mercedes, I love her.
Yeah. Mercedes was the one that actually notified you of your gestational diabetes, correct?
She did, yeah.
Yeah.
And she was also confused on how I didn't know already either. She was like, wait, girl, you have gestational diabetes. She's like, we're going to try and get this under control. But if we can't, we're going to have to transfer you. And I felt so bad, because she was like, I'm so sorry. And I know she didn't want to. I really know she didn't want to. But it's just safer,
Yeah. And it was something that was out of both of your control.
It really was. Yeah. Because I was living my life.
Eating all that cheese.
I was. Oh my God. Everything.
Yeah.
I'm pregnant. Give me the food.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care what you say. I want it. Did you do any preparations for labor while you were pregnant? Like, did you take any childbirth education classes, any online courses for anything in preparation for labor and parenting?
So I didn't. So I did do a lot of like little online classes and stuff that came like with my insurance. I didn't go out of my way and pay for any classes or anything. But I did. I was huge on audiobooks. Oh my gosh. I downloaded so many audiobooks, and I I was listening to something new almost every week.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, I was filling up my head with a bunch of different tips, different tricks. Even you gave me some resources, like the cards that you gave me to help a woman in labor and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I
The
was,
affirmation cards, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was soaking it all up. Oh, yeah. And meditation was a huge thing.
Yeah, I think that mentioning meditation is actually a good transition into the next question, which is how did you or how were you feeling leading up to your labor as it was getting closer? And were you like aware when labor started for you? And, because you had some communication going on with
I
baby Nakoma.
did. I did. Okay. So that's actually pretty funny because when we I am a very spiritual person, so I feel like the mind is way more powerful than people really think it is, or
Mm-hmm.
really know that it is. I would say, um, when it came when it came down to the wire, and I had my induction date, which was at 38 weeks. It was gonna be on the Monday after Halloween last year, and I was going to run out of insulin a couple days
Mm-hmm.
before, and I was just like, okay, baby, I need you to come at this date on this time because after that, mommy's going to run out of insulin, and I don't want to waste an entire prescription to have you come out the next day and me just have all this insulin. So I was just talking to her in my mind before we went to bed that night. We went to bed on I think it was the 30th or the 29th. I don't remember. Or it was the 29th. And then I woke up on the 30th at 8 o'clock in the morning. I went to the bathroom, which was routine.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the bathroom and I I was like, this is a lot of pee. I'm going for a long time. And then it was just like a snap. Like, I felt like a balloon or something had popped. It was just like a little snap and then just a
Mm-hmm.
gush.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so happy that I was sitting on the toilet already because that was a lot. And I
Yeah.
remember just kind of taking in that moment, and I was like, oh my God, like, did this just happen? Like, it was so, it was an exciting moment because it was just me and I was the only one. And Josh, I was going pee in our master bedroom and I had the door open and I was just staring at him sleeping on the bed because we can see the bed from the toilet. And I was just
Mm-hmm.
looking, I was like, I can't wait to tell him. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to tell him. But I called you first.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you called me
I
first.
did. I was like, I think this is happening right now. My water just broke. And then he like starts to like rustle up a little bit, and I was just like, babe, my water broke.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still sitting on the toilet, and water's still coming out.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
definitely exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. And at that moment, I had asked you, like, do you have any contractions yet? Or, like, what does it look like, smell like? Does it look weird, smell weird? Is it green? Is it not? To
Mm-hmm.
kind of navigate, like, how much of a rush you needed to head to the hospital or not. You had told me everything was all right. So,
Yeah. I was actually feeling like fine at that moment. So it was funny because you're like, oh yeah, you don't need to rush. You're fine. I didn't feel like I needed to rush either, but I called them. I called the hospital a little bit later in the day just in case. I think it was like noon. And it was actually funny because
mm-hmm.
my mom was there, our mom was there the night before, and she had just left for work. She was gonna work a double. So she was like, okay, you don't you have this baby? And I think it's so funny that she said that. Because she also said that to you for
Mm-hmm.
on Cairo's birth.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe she just called it into existence, but she's like, don't you even try to have that baby right now. You wait till your induction date. But I
Mm-hmm.
called her, and she starts work at 8 a.m. So I called her shortly after. It was like 9, and I was like, hey mom, my water broke. And she's like, are you serious? I told her, I was like, but I'm not rushing to the hospital. You just stay and do your job. Kiana said I don't have to rush, so I'm not gonna rush. I'm just gonna laze around. But I actually called the hospital at around noon, and they were like, oh, if your water broke, you should come in, because I was actually GBS positive.
GBS, yeah. And I totally forgot about that because,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I would
you
have been like,
forgot.
oh, hey, you should go in. But
Yeah,
yeah.
because I needed to get started on antibiotics, so nothing happened to baby. And she she was like, "Yeah, you want to come in now?" And then when she said that, Josh went into like freak out mode. He was like, "Oh, like what? We've got to get everything together." I was like, "We have everything. We have a bag." I was like, "You just stop that. I already packed everything."
Hmm.
And I was like, "This is why we packed, babe."
Yeah.
But when we got there, yeah, they did all the tests to make sure that we were actually, my water did actually break and on all that. And we were admitted shortly after.
Yeah. Yeah. And you actually kind of took your time getting there.
I did. I still took my time, because I think we took no, did you take the dogs? I don't remember. Somebody took the
I did.
dogs.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
picked up the dogs and took them to dad's.
Yeah. Because we didn't want my babies to be here alone, mainly because Timber likes to chew up pillows.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, we got admitted, and immediately, so anytime there has to be any kind of like cervical check, I just always get extremely tense. I am never okay with cervical checks, just even to see where I am. Never okay with it. My mind just goes to a dark place, and it's not fun. So when they had to do it, um, they had to do it before we got admitted, and I hated it. And then literally my or Josh, he was just like looking at me with like these eyes of like, I'm so sorry, baby. Like I would switch you places if I could.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just extremely uncomfortable, and I hate it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's so interesting because, there are some people that don't mind cervical exams.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some people that like it's super painful and really triggering into some past events in their lives, or just really invasive because, someone is putting their hand up inside your vagina to touch your cervix. So
Literally felt like
it's not, you felt like a puppet, you said?
yes, a puppet.
Oh,
Well, and it doesn't help that that Dr. Park Wang, she's so tiny, and
mm,
I'm not huge by any means, but like so she is so small that when she was putting her hand inside me, I really feel like she went up to her elbow because she's so tiny, you know? That's at least
mm.
what it felt like.
Yeah, I'm sure you weren't like staring down at your vulva while it was happening.
Yeah, no.
You were coping in
Oh,
other ways.
I was closing my eyes, I was holding my breath, I was, all the things to try and make it get over quicker, to be done
Mm-hmm.
faster. But yeah.
Yeah. You were actually running away from around the table a little
Oh
bit,
my
you
God,
said.
I was definitely running away from her, not on purpose, but she was like, "You got to stay at the end of the table," and I was just like, up, up, up,
Mm-hmm.
running away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you got into the hospital and got admitted, you got put into your room. Did you
Mhm.
start having contractions between the time your water broke and getting to the hospital, or when did your
Um.
contractions start?
So I felt like your initial uh response of like, hey, you probably don't need to rush. Like, I felt like that would have been fine. I know the antibiotics are important, and I'm sure I'm glad that I went in there for it, but I don't think that anything really started picking up a lot until we got the pitocin, and
Mm-hmm.
so my my actual labor or my contractions, it felt like pinches, but it didn't feel like it was unbearable.
Mm-hmm.
um I will say that like when things actually did start picking up, I was uh we said we weren't going to do actually we weren't going to start the induction until midnight that night, and my doctor actually wasn't even there. She was on vacation
Mm-hmm.
because she was expecting to not be having a baby yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, or not have me having a baby yet. So she was out, and they called her and let her know, hey, your patient's in labor. She was like, ask if, because I told her already, I was like, I don't want to have a baby before Halloween. She's going to be a Halloween baby. This is going to be the day, even though I wasn't supposed to go in until a couple days later. she was like, at least wait until Halloween. And this is all joking, of course, like, because baby's gonna come
Right.
whenever baby's gonna come.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, we did. We didn't induce until midnight that night, and I think that was the 30th. 30th. Well, midnight, technically 31st. So,
Mm-hmm.
When we did do Pitocin, I was actually really nervous because you weren't there yet, and I was like, I don't want to do anything until you get there, because I was so scared. It just being my
Mm-hmm.
first. I think that a lot of the fear just came from just not being confident in myself, and
Mm.
that just goes back into my own personal like anxieties and stuff like that, which I've worked with and struggled with actually my whole life, just lack of confidence and stuff like that. But I feel
Mm.
like this, to kind of skip forward a little bit, I know we'll go back. I feel like this whole experience, while it kind of sounds a little bit somber for me, it has changed me to make me like the most strong I've ever been and most confident I've ever been. And so I don't want people thinking like, oh, sad her, because it has definitely made me like a stronger person and way more confident.
Yeah. And I love that. And I'm excited to talk more about the details as to why that is, because as your birth story goes on, we will hear why.
Yeah.
And that. But so let's go ahead and move on a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember you got admitted and then you were texting me. I kept checking in with you, making sure everything was okay. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I think you started having a little bit of contractions that
I
were
did.
starting to get a little bit more intense. Not like full on contractions yet, but you were like, oh, I'm actually starting to feel these more, needing to like breathe through them and stuff before you even got Pitocin.
Yes, yeah. And I needed the
And then,
gas actually, because
yeah.
you'd said, because my goal was to do it without the epidural, and so we were trying to exhaust our options before getting to the epidural. I was just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's try the gas. I was like, this gas ain't working.
Yeah, we also tried the gas after you started Pitocin.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you said, I think we got Pitocin around midnight,
Mm-hmm.
and then, or you got Pitocin around midnight. And then you were laboring, and you were laboring really well. Like you were laboring super well. You were going very much inward and like breathing. You were
Mm-hmm.
letting us know when we could touch you, when we couldn't. And then, it was really late. So I think Josh took a nap at some point when we were doing the gas.
Yeah.
And you said the gas wasn't working for you?
It was, but I think that I was just inhaling way too much. I was like, okay, gas, inhale, gas, and like it was a lot. I was getting lightheaded, and just I was getting lightheaded because of the gas, but then all of the emotions, I guess, because once again,
Mm-hmm.
I was starting to just feel everything. Like it's such an intense moment,
Mm-hmm.
and I was trying to really go inside my mind and listen to my body and listen to what I needed to do. So I was up, I was moving around, I felt like I was going to the bathroom every 2 seconds because she was right there. And also, I think that, well, I guess I could go back to this really quick. The main reason why I was feeling a lot of pain with the cervical exams was that they had to go around her head to get to my cervix.
Yeah. It's basically like baby's head was so engaged and so far down into your pelvis that your cervix was behind her head.
Yeah,
And
that's
so the
exactly.
doctor had to go behind your head and like pull your cervix forward a little bit to do that exam, which is not a very fun sensation.
It was not fun at all. It wasn't. And so me knowing that, because the first doctor had told me that that's what was going on. So then I went into every exam after that thinking, okay, it's going to hurt because this is why, so I just kind of wish that they didn't tell me that.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
also good preparation in a way, I guess.
Like, okay, this is gonna feel a little bit weird, but yeah. So going back to the actual labor part, so I felt like she was right there. I felt like she was just knocking on the door. And it's crazy because you feel so much, but when they tell you how much your cervix has opened, it doesn't feel like that. I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm 10 centimeters right now. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that going into this, I thought, oh yeah, I have a really high pain tolerance. I'll be fine, but
Mm-hmm.
I learned very quickly that I don't have a high pain tolerance when it comes to um, just my own, like something that personal.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was just really hard for me. And maybe it is trauma, maybe it is because it just brought me to a dark place. And I remember talking to you, um, and I was feeling defeated, and I was feeling really down because I was like, maybe my body isn't made for this. Maybe I can't do this like so many other
Mm-hmm.
amazing women can. And I was just like, it was so sad. It was really sad. And I remember looking at you and I was just like, I just feel like a failure because I can't, my mind is not allowing me to make this a peaceful, or not necessarily peaceful, but it's not allowing me to enjoy the birth of my first child. And it got so deep for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do the epidural because I don't want to experience birth as something that was so painful and traumatic for me that I couldn't um, enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to associate it with good things.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to be able to look back and think positive thoughts about your labor and birth rather
Mm-hmm.
than trauma or traumatic, intense moments. Yeah. And that's good because, I've told you this before, and I've told a lot of doula clients this before, that you, as the sole individual that is laboring, you are the one that knows the difference between coping and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And you made that decision. You're like, I am no longer coping through this. This is suffering, and I don't want that.
Yeah, and I think that was my turning point of um, feeling kind of sorry for myself, and then turning that into I'm going to make the decision,
Mm-hmm.
to change this. Like, I'm not going to feel bad about like how I'm not going to feel like I'm lesser than. I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to actually birth my child.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny because I got the epidural and I was just like, all right, guys, I'm going to bed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think one important part that I wanted to mention is like before you got the epidural, because some people get checked before, some people don't.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you about it because you were such in this like deep space and you
Mm-hmm.
were like, I don't know, like, I don't think I can do this unmedicated anymore. And I remember that wanting to be your primary goal was to be unmedicated.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked you, I was like, do you want to get checked prior to getting the epidural? Because, some people, if they get checked and they're super close, they're like, cool, yeah, I can
I can
work
do
through
this.
it and push
Yeah.
through. Yeah. And then some people are like, heck no, like I don't even
Mm-hmm.
care what the number is right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that. And so I feel like that's where you were at because you were like,
It was.
I don't care.
I was
Yeah.
like, nope, just I don't even care. Don't even tell me. Just give me the
Mm-hmm.
epidural, and I will get through the rest of this.
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't know like how much longer it would be. I don't think when it comes to looking back and then trying to piece together like what happened,
Mm-hmm.
time is it's just so fluid. Like I don't remember what time was what. I literally feel like I was in and out, but it could be hours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like being in the labor zone or supporting someone that is laboring, it is just a time warp. It is such a time warp because you're just in it and you just go with the flow of how things are going.
Hmm.
And that could be hours or minutes,
Yeah,
depending on what you're focusing on. Yeah,
definitely.
for sure. How was it after you got the epidural? How did you feel?
After I got the epidural, it was really funny because I think that's when I just became kind of just like all confident.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, okay, so now that I'm muted, I felt like I got some kind of like a cheat code. I was like, okay, let's get this baby out. But it was
Mm-hmm.
hilarious because well, it was great first because I was absolutely exhausted both mentally and physically. So when I got the epidural, I was like, okay, I am going to re-energize. I literally sat there and meditated because then I can't move. I closed my
Mm-hmm.
eyes and I was like, let me try to get some rest. I'm going to try and meditate. And I thought it was hilarious because you like were like, you had to flip me at that point. I was like, oh dang. Like it's like that. I can't move at all.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. One thing that I was surprised about, but I shouldn't have been surprised about, was the catheter. I was like, oh no, I have to use a catheter. I didn't think that through, because those, I hate the idea of catheters, but I know why they're there. You know, it's good to not be fully loose.
Yeah, yeah, because you wouldn't be able to feel whether or not you peed on yourself or not.
Exactly.
Or some people, don't know that they're peeing, or some people can't pee because the muscle is completely like numb. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but I just felt like I was meditating, I was resting, I was like literally just talking to her. I was just like, okay, you're coming, it's Halloween, you're coming, it's after midnight, so you're gonna be a Halloween baby. And then I was just resting, and I felt like that was such a good, I don't remember what time it was. I think she was actually born at like 9:57 or something like that. And it was, I think it was 8 in the morning, and they were like, okay, you're 10 centimeters. Are you ready? And like, they were waking me up, and I had been going through contractions this whole time, and I just was chilling. I didn't even know. And I, when they were like, okay, are you ready? I was like, not yet. I'm just going to sleep a little bit longer. And they were like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to sleep a little bit longer. I'm still tired. So I did. I slept. I don't remember how long I slept, but it was a little bit. And
it was quite some time.
It was.
It was like 30 minutes, maybe even an hour. Like, I think they came in to check, and you were like,
yeah,
maybe just a little bit longer.
I know. And then they woke me up. They were like, I think it's really time now. And I was just like, okay, I guess, let's go. Let's get this baby out. And literally, I think that I pushed for like 45 minutes, and she was here.
Yeah. It was so awesome.
Yeah, I was so excited because, I'd already been feeling much more confident because I got the rest that I needed, and my mind was in a completely different space. I was in a happy place now, because I felt like I had control. And I know a lot of people, when they get the epidural, they say that they feel like they didn't have control. They feel like they feel like they don't have control because they're being told when to push. And then they feel like they're pushing, and they don't think that they're pushing. But for me, all I needed was for them to be like, hey, okay, and you can start now. And the anesthesiologist that actually worked with me was amazing, because I could still feel things. I could feel the immense pressure, but it was not painful. So when they told me to push, I could push, and I could feel the pressure. So I was pushing, and they were like, is this your first kid? Pretty sure. I was like, I know what I'm doing. And plus I have a lot of leg strength and lower body strength. I was just going. I was pushing. And they were like, she's here. She's going to be here like quickly.
Yeah, like you did your first push, and we saw so much bulging like on your first push.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh my gosh, like that's so great. And I think by like your second or maybe third push, like we could already start seeing her hair and her head.
Which she had a lot of hair. Everyone after her birth, and I was posting pictures of her online, they were like, whoa, heartburn. I was like, yes, heartburn. But I know it was definitely, it was great. I felt like I had a lot of control, and that's not something that I usually feel like, which maybe is why Josh is always hating it, because he's just like, what do you mean you got control of everything?
That's hilarious.
I know. No, but I was so happy. I was so happy. And it overwhelmingly, when they put her on my chest, it was the most overwhelming, like, happy and exhausted I've ever been.
Yeah.
Because while it doesn't seem like pushing for 45 minutes, like, I know there's women that push a lot longer, and they are exhausted. I was tired, but I was just soaking it all in, it was such a beautiful feeling. And then it was crazy because she was just immediately, her eyes were just open and she was looking at everybody like wide eyed, and everyone was like, whoa, she is alert.
Mm-hmm.
And when she came out, I think she was 8 pounds and 14 ounces or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, she was a big baby, but she was well worth the wait. And having big babies is not something to be absolutely terrified of. So like when they told me that was a huge problem, and like, oh, she's gonna have shoulder dystocia possibly, and I was gonna have all these complications, and we were gonna have to do a C-section. I was like, no, no, no. We're going to do this and we're going to be healthy, you know? So she's definitely a solid baby even now.
Yeah, I just looked at the picture and she was 8 pounds, 12 ounces on the dot. So
Okay. How long was she? Does it say it on there?
She was tall. She was also tall too.
She is 99th percentile.
Yeah. Okay. She has continued to grow and flourish at the size that she came out. Like she continued to stay juicy.
Yeah, it's funny because your baby, she's in the 70th percentile. Was it?
She's actually, for height, she's in the 12th percentile.
She's in the 12th percentile, and Nicoma's in the 99th percentile. So 12%
of a 1.5-year-old.
Yeah, 1.5-year-old is the same height as my 6-month-old.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. After Nikoma has been born, and it made me realize that my babies are pretty small. And
they are tiny.
I guess they take after their dad and their dad's side on that. Yeah.
Overall, though, it's been the most magical experience that I've ever experienced, and I'm so happy. Even when we were just with Grandma yesterday. She was like, "You are the happiest that I've ever seen you," and I'm just like, "Thanks, Grandma." And she's like, "Now send me some more pictures."
Yeah. That's so awesome that she said that to you, because I believe it too. I remember seeing a picture of you that you sent us with Nikoma just in like a fuzzy bear suit outside on your guys' first walk after being home. I think it was like a zebra print or something. And
it's a leopard, cloud leopard print.
Oh, cloud leopard print. But you were just so happy, and you were just like that otter meme where they're like, I made this, this. Like that's what it felt like. Yeah.
She was a little chunky baby inside that little like just bear suit.
Yeah.
It was so cute. Oh my God. I know. Yeah. I love it. And that's got to be one of my favorite pictures too, because one of my favorite early pictures, but there's a lot, I have a lot of favorite pictures. I can't keep one as my favorite.
It has officially taken over the camera role.
Yes, it was.
So do you remember birthing your placenta at all?
No. So that's another thing. Like when I tell you that the time really, I feel like it got away from me after baby was born. I was just like, I did it. And I was all baby after that. Like I didn't even care what else was happening to me. I know that I did have I think it was a 1-degree tear, that they did put sutures in, and they were doing that, and I had baby. I was just, it just didn't even feel like anything else was happening except for baby, So I do remember that they were suturing me, and I do remember. Oh, I guess obviously they were suturing me after the placenta came out, but I remember you guys asking if I wanted to see it. I was like, ew, no, keep it over there.
Yeah. I think I showed Josh.
I know. Yeah. I know that a lot of people are like, oh yes, I want to see it. I want to see the thing that gave my baby life. And I'm just like, throw it away. That gave me gestational diabetes.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
You're like, we have a love-hate relationship with your placenta.
I did. I was like, you get away. I'm not even going to encapsulate you. But yeah, I know. Maybe with the next one. And I keep telling Josh, I can't wait, because he only wants to have 2 babies. But I'm gonna surprise him. We're gonna have twins next time, and I'm just gonna be like, that's what you get. You're gonna get 2 at one.
2 at once.
I know. I can't wait. I know, but hopefully next time, even if I do get gestational diabetes, I will come into it with a completely different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about your mind, and it's all about how you go in it. Because if you go in with like, oh, it's going to be a terrible pregnancy, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do this, you just have to go with the flow, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
expect that your body will change, and it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Exactly. Oh, let's talk about how feeding was for you
Yeah.
with Nikoma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, breastfeeding, I was always confident that I'm gonna be a rock star. I already have big boobs. I got this. My child is not gonna go hungry.
Yeah.
But it was a little bit difficult at first. So in the in the room where she was birthed, she latched right on, because they did give her to me, and she latched on for a little bit, and she there was no problem. Um, but when I started getting scared, because the I feel like it was the next day, but I think it was just later on in the same day. When we were by ourselves, I felt like I was more scared, because I'm by myself now with my baby. How do I know if I'm doing this right, And then I was scared because she wouldn't wake up for me. And I was
Mm-hmm.
asking all the doctors. They were like, "Oh yeah, that's normal. You just got to make her a little bit uncomfortable, because she's so cozy right now. She's all warm, and she's with mommy now, and you just
Mm-hmm.
got to wake her up." And I was like, "Oh, like." I was struggling to get her to wake up and stay awake for feeding. She kept
Mm-hmm.
falling asleep. And one of the feedings, I had to give her a little bottle of formula, because she wasn't latching on at all. She wouldn't stay up for it, but I had to like force the little bottle, just to try to keep her fed.
Mm-hmm.
But after a little while, after just being a little bit patient and coming at it with a different mindset once again, she started latching, and she was a little bit better. But the other issue that we ran into is she had a slight tongue tie, and there was a lot of pain on my side. But I was just like, we're gonna get through this, because I need to feed you.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even going to let the pain stop me from trying to feed her, but it was hard. It was really hard. And I
Yeah.
definitely understood why so many people give up so early. And this is
Mm-hmm.
even like back when had just brought her home. Even I was struggling hard, because not only did I have to fight to wake her up to feed, I also had to like grin and bear it while she was eating.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
but you were the one that actually noticed the tongue tie. And then when we asked if we should get it revised at our pediatrician, and she had initially said no, and we actually talked to another pediatrician, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we'll do it right now." Um, and that was another traumatic experience for us, because we didn't feel like he did it with much compassion. We definitely felt like it was like oh yeah, I could just clip it right now, and then I'll go on with my day. He gave her the lidocaine, um, and then like it was literally like lidocaine, snip. There was no pause. There was no like, let's let this kick in. And she screamed her little head off, and I just felt
Mm.
terrible, because he normally, wait at least like 10 minutes to let it set in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the reason that I knew that she was unmedicated for that little procedure was that he was like, "Okay, I'm gonna snip her, and then you breastfeed right away to calm her down." And I was like, "Okay, okay." And so he snipped her. She starts screaming. I breastfeed her, and then it's working. The tongue tie was revised, and she's got a much better latch now. But I hated that, because like her latch was actually like much better. It was like strong. But when I noticed that, like, when you get lidocaine, like, you're numb, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when they were also giving her the shots that day. So she got her immunizations, and they said breastfeed her right away after, so that you can calm her down. So I breastfed her after that, and she couldn't navigate her tongue at all. So I knew there was a huge difference, like, between her, like, just getting the lidocaine, and then shortly after, maybe like 15 minutes after, then now she's not able to utilize her tongue. So I was like, holy cow, she just got her tongue clipped and went through all the pain. you know?
Yeah.
And that was so sad for me. And the doctor had Josh hold her down for that procedure. And he literally was looking at me like he was going to cry. And so I had to look away from him because I know he doesn't want to cry.
Mm-hmm.
And I was about to cry.
Yeah. And I think that that is so hard because I would imagine that in an office that regularly practices tongue tie revisions, they would, one, be more compassionate and be patient,
Mm-hmm.
with the fact that you are clipping the tongue of a baby. And even if they're super young and may not remember the revision,
Mm-hmm.
they are still present in that moment. And it's still going to hurt in that moment if you don't wait.
Oh, yes.
And so I wish that they would have waited. And then I also wish that they would have pulled in another person that is used to seeing tongue tie revisions, such as like a nurse or someone from their staff, their
Yeah.
medical staff, to do the holding down part, because that's
Mm-hmm.
traumatic for a parent to have to do.
Oh, yeah.
To have to like hold down your baby as they're crying. And I think Nakoma was what, not even 2 weeks old?
She wasn't. Yeah. It was just, she was, I think that was our 2-week visit. Like, yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. And I remember you calling me and being so upset. You're like, Kiona, why did you tell us to do the tongue tie revision? And then you explained it to me, and I was like, that is not how we did it.
You were also in shock, and I wasn't blaming you for it because I knew that it probably wasn't. That's probably not what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you had actually come from like a history of working in a tongue tie revision setting, like,
Yeah.
and you're like, that's not how it happens. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'm going to go into it next time being more educated.
Yeah, because I used to work with Dr. Marianne O'Hara at the Seattle Breastfeeding Clinic, and she does it completely opposite of that. She swaddles baby rather than holds them down.
Yeah.
So she doesn't necessarily always need someone else's hands. She does make sure that babies are numb completely before. She even coos them to sleep sometimes, and they will sleep during the procedure because she numbs them so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then breastfeeding after. Her visits with her clients can run anywhere from 2 to 4 hours just for a tongue tie revision,
Yeah.
because she takes her time so much. And so when you told me that the provider you went to did it in that manner so quickly, and they're like, okay, snip, snip.
Yeah.
It broke my heart.
Oh yeah, it broke our heart too. And I mean, but to fast forward to now though, like she's got her tongue out of her mouth all the time. So there's no it's not like it was done like shoddy or anything, but I think that the numbing aspect of it was totally not the way that it was supposed to have been done or should have been done.
I agree. So how was the immediate postpartum part for you? Like, did you have family support?
Oh, you know it. So
I know it, but the listeners have to know it
yeah,
too.
yep. So the immediate postpartum for me, I felt so happy and so grateful for all the support that we had, because you and the girls and mom and even Josh's mom came here later. We just I had a constant support net. And then I had our stepmom. She made that same drink that she makes for you. It's the one that it's a Guatemalan recipe. I'm not exactly sure what everything that's in it, but it's like it's a helps with your milk production. And it definitely helped. Like, I was bursting at the seams.
Yeah.
But I think that some of that also comes with just not knowing how much, my body not knowing how much to produce at first. So it was like, oh, we got all this stuff, we're gonna make it. But yeah, so I had people over every day helping. Mom basically lived with us. And she was helping every day, and she was just like, I'm here to see my baby. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Mom. She's like, no, not you. I'm like, oh, okay. Whatever. But yeah, so we had people were helping me cook. We also, Monet, our sister, she also got me like a DoorDash gift card so we could order food too after everybody left, so that we didn't have to feel like we had to cook. And we had a huge support net, and I was so grateful. Yeah. I didn't ever feel like I was alone. And I got to get some rest, and I was still tired. I was still, of course, exhausted, but then my body kind of kicked into like, oh, I should be hosting. And you were like, don't you dare, go lay down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to like break that though, because when people are at your house, usually you're hosting, but they're usually there immediately, like postpartum, the first few weeks, first month or so postpartum, they're like, no, you can rest. It's fine.
Yeah.
We know
I
you haven't slept all night.
You were coming over and doing my dishes. And I'm just like, who is out there? You were cleaning. And I was just like, oh, like it was so nice. I didn't have to worry about anything, which I thank you for.
Yeah, of course, of course. We're going to be taking turns doing that with Mo here in
I know.
a month. So
yeah, I think I put on my guest for her birthday or her baby shower, I put that she's going to have a baby early.
Oh, really? I put 2 days late, so we'll see.
Yep.
We'll see who wins.
Yep.
Okay, so to wrap up this interview, I wanted to know if there's any piece of advice that you would give to the listeners that are expecting on how to prepare for labor, birth, or parenting.
I would say kind of what I said earlier in the podcast. So I feel like you need to be in a healthy mindset. So go with the flow. Expect that your body will change, but it's not always for the worse, Trust your body. And, when some people say, oh yeah, your body can do it, trust your body. You don't be persuaded to go unmedicated because your body can do it. Everybody's telling you your body can do it. You don't need medication. It's not necessarily a bad thing to take medication, but you should just in total trust that your body either can do it, or trust that your body, trust when you need to tap out, basically, and it's not necessarily like, oh, I give up. It's like your mind, trust your mind.
Yeah. Trust your own personal boundaries and limitations, because, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to go completely unmedicated because my neighbor did or my sister did.
Yeah.
It's more of you being in tune with your body and your needs and your mental space, all of it.
Yeah.
So I like that. That's great advice. What is one resource we can share with our listeners on your behalf?
One thing that helped me, I know I said I read a lot of audiobooks, or listened to a lot of audiobooks. This is one book that I actually physically attained. Was the Real Food for Gestational Diabetes. If you do come down with diabetes, this book helped me a lot with trying to understand what gestational diabetes was, what kinds of foods I should avoid, what portions I should take, and what foods that I could eat. And it was really just really easily understood.
Mm-hmm. Do you know the author of that book?
The author of this book is Lily Nichols, and there's also another book. If you don't have gestational diabetes, it is The Real Food for Pregnancy.
By the same author?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then to wrap it up, if you could describe your birth in one word, what would it be?
Transformational. And I say that without even thinking twice, really, because I feel like I've been saying it ever since she was born. I feel like my life has changed for the better, and it has been so positive. Such a good change.
Yay. I love that. I love that word, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. There's definitely lots of transformation that happens when it comes to becoming pregnant and birthing your baby, as well as just becoming a parent. So it's very transformational in all aspects when it comes to the relationship you have with yourself, the relationship you even have with your partner and family members. So I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Oz. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited and honored to be able to share your story. It was so much fun for me to be able to connect with Oz again and to process her birth story with her in this manner. It was amazing to be able to hear the birth of Nikoma from her perspective, and to also shine some light on a positive epidural birth experience, because there's so many negative epidural birth experiences out there that it's good to also have people be aware that epidurals are very needed for some people, and it can really help prevent trauma. For next week's episode, Tune in to hear my interview with Jasmine Williams, owner and co-lead of Blackberry, BLKBRY, a full-spectrum doula business that provides Black-centered holistic care. She speaks on her 2 traumatic birth experiences that led her to creating Blackberry. This is something you're not going to want to miss, so make sure you tune in next week. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. Don't hesitate to share this with your family and friends. If you liked this episode, feel free to leave a review so my podcast can pop up for others and they can see and listen to it as well. If you have a birth story or experience you would want to share on the Birth As We Know It podcast, head over to KionaNessenbaum.com and fill out the guest request form. That is KionaNessenbaum.com. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. Bye for now.